Well, it's certainly a very, very warm one in the UK today. I don't know if you can tell, but my word, it's a bit warm, and that's an understatement. Um, it's cracking Six Flags, as we say up in the north. Um, but it would be odd to not talk about the events that happened yesterday in Parliament. For those of you who know, or may not know, Labour decided it was going to call a no confidence vote in the government. And the wording of the no confidence vote was squarely aimed at Boris Johnson. It's not the government we don't have confidence in, it's Boris Johnson who's leading this government. And he is just god awful and needs to be gotten rid of. Now, of course, if this had happened, this would have probably ended up leading to a general election. And I think this would have been a complete rollover for the opposition, to a point where even the Conservatives know themselves they're not going to vote for a general election, even though by the looks of the numbers, there was a good number who certainly did vote for it. The Johnson only managed to win by about a majority of 111 votes. So, you know, he certainly managed to sort of keep himself in position for the time being. But there's already been a couple of scandals that I think are certainly making a lot of Tory MPs very, very nervous about maybe doing the deal to sort of keep him in at least until the leadership contest has been done. And even then, Johnson has already done, I think, enough damage to the Conservative Party that whoever replaces him is going to have a massive uphill battle in trying to replace him. So let's go over these events, because there were some incredibly strange events during this no confidence vote and the discussions around it that I think really need to be covered, because some of the stuff, especially some of the stuff Johnson said, was very, very interesting. Very, very Trumpian, shall we say, in nature, and also a bit worrying as well. So before we do go jumping into this, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So on with this. This comes from The Guardian. Their coverage on this of Boris Johnson defends the record as government wins confidence vote. So Boris Johnson has defended his 3 years in power as his government has survived a no confidence vote during a very combative speech that hinted at a, quote, deep state plot. And yeah, this is just bizarre, to drag the UK back into the EU when he leaves office. There's not a single Conservative in the running who is backing that. And it's kind of bizarre that he would say that, because is he hinting then that one of those members is secretly going to pull the UK back into the EU? That's not going to happen at all, but there you go. The Prime Minister's very pernicious speech in the House of Commons on Monday evening opened the debate on this vote of no confidence that his government won by 349 to 238, a majority of 111. And in a highly unusual move, Number 10 called the vote of confidence in itself after it rejected the Labour motion that signalled out Johnson. Standing beside Liz Truss a day after she and the other Tory leadership contenders had failed to say whether they would have him in their cabinet, Johnson raised eyebrows by claiming that Keir Starmer and what he described as the, quote, deep state, a term favoured by conspiracy theorists, intended to take the UK back into the EU. You're in the government, you are, at this point, Johnson, the deep state. And I think it goes to show you the desperation there really, really is, because obviously Johnson is like the big main cheerleader for Brexit. And I think that the idea that when he is gone, that there is less of a momentum of Brexit, I think is quite right, because so far him, quote, getting Brexit done is his only big achievement. And really, he hasn't actually achieved Brexit. Johnson did this incredibly reckless move, pulling out a deal which basically, when he was obviously being voted in and in his own leadership contest, was saying all the right words to the Eurosceptics in his party, namely the ERG, who kept him in power. Ultimately, I wouldn't be surprised if it is the ERG that again has kept him in power today. So it's certainly very interesting to see him pull these very, very bizarre conspiracy theory moves. But there you go. However, Starmer was able to capitalise the government's recent turmoil, telling the Commons, now is not the time for Downing Street to be occupied by a vengeful squatter mired in scandal. And amid the pressure from many of his own Conservatives in his ranks for Johnson to leave Downing Street as soon as possible, the Labour leader said that the Tory leadership race was taking place against a backdrop of 8 weeks in which the British public must trust the word of a Prime Minister who has been sacked because he can't be trusted. That's a good attack line. I'll give Starmer that. That's very, very good. Turning Johnson's own claims on him that Tories MPs had ousted him because they were, quote, following the herd, Starmer said that he had, quote, has not been felled by an erratic herd. Instead, he has been forced out in disgrace. Johnson had originally said, Labour had originally said it would seek to hold a confidence vote after Johnson announced that he was staying on as Prime Minister until the autumn, and a new Conservative leader was in place. However, the government refused to accept the wording of the Labour motion, which expressed no confidence in the government and the Prime Minister. So ministers tabled the motion of their own. Opening the debate, Johnson hailed his 2019 general election success and celebrated his Brexit record. What exactly have you got to celebrate? It's not really that good a record. Telling MPs, quote, we got Brexit done, and though the, quote, the rejoiners and the revengers were left plotting and planning and biding their time, and I'll have more to say about the events of the last few weeks and months in due course, we delivered on every single one of our promises. No, you haven't delivered on even one promise, certainly when it comes to around Brexit. The Northern Ireland Protocol at the moment, especially by the DUP, who you have backed very, very wrongly, is going to cause huge problems. They have still not said that they are going to go back into Stormont because of your deal. And your deal still does not get rid of the border in the Irish Sea, which even then the DUP have expressly said that is what they want to get rid of, the border completely gone. The new deal that Johnson is proposing and even tearing up, even unilaterally, without going to negotiate with the EU, basically does not get rid of that Irish Sea border. The DUP are not going to be happy with it. And we're going to be, as we've said before, the DUP just causing crisis after crisis after crisis because that's what they can do. Yeah, although this is the more interesting comment, though, that he'll have, quote, more to say about the events of last week and months in due course. So very, very clearly, Johnson himself is planning a revenge plot. And we know Johnson is given in his very own nature to taking revenge. So probably expect some very interesting and explosive revelations if Johnson does get in. Whoever, should we say, replaces him. Instead, can be very, very interesting. Anyway, he then turned to the COVID-19 pandemic, claiming the pandemic was a global whose origins were not fully understandable, but were nothing to do with the British people. That's weird in itself. And if anything, the result of a distant misbehavior involving bats or pathogens, and those who spread was appallingly difficult to manage, and this government never gave up through wave after wave. Again, it's not a very, very good thing to say that when Johnson so far has been deliberately trying to damage the coronavirus public inquiry into the government's failings on this. And trust me, it is going to be a massive, massive failing, hence why he's trying to damage that as much as possible. And it's something that Labour should definitely attack him on. Anyway, it continues. However, there was also vocal support for Johnson from some of his own backbenchers, including the ultra-loyalist Michael Fabricant, who intervened during the Prime Minister's speech to tell him, "I personally think that our party is making the same mistake that Labour made when they knifed Tony Blair." There was also a brief rerun of the 2019 election campaign when the former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn stood up to accuse him of leaving a legacy of poverty, inequality, and insecurity. Johnson said that he was, quote, thrilled to be debating once again with Corbyn. One of the most cutting remarks came from the Welsh Labour MP, Kevin Barman, who said that it was unconventional for the government to be tabling its own vote of no confidence and for Johnson to speak at it. He added, only an unconventional man would speak at his own funeral. So, yeah, Johnson is definitely on his way out. There's no way he stays. But it's very clear, one thing we've already said, the idea that Johnson is building up his own backbench rebel alliance and is set to certainly cause a lot of trouble on those backbenchers, regardless even of the Standards Committee inquiry coming up. He isn't going to resign as an MP. No way. And even the Standards Committee, he gets found out for lying. He'll get suspended. He isn't resigning. That's very much full on that. And not only that, the next Tory leader is not going to be able to touch him. He's going to be untouchable. You know, this is why, even though Theresa May, again, according to Boris Johnson, was like the worst thing to happen to Brexit in a generation, Boris did not deign to throw her out in the 2019 election, as he did to many of May's allies and sort of fellow sort of more moderate Conservative MPs. He kept her in because it is bad form to sort of really go after sort of your former leader. They're not going to be going on the attack against Johnson. He's going to sit there like a boil in the House of Parliament, and no one's going to be able to touch him. And he is going to cause a lot of trouble for his successor, and probably not just his successor, but the Tory party as well. It's going to be very, very interesting with Boris Johnson on the backbenches. So with that said, thank you very much to those who for watching today. Please do remember to support the channel by hitting the like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all very soon.